Hello, everybody, and welcome to the HuntScience podcast. I'm your host, Eric Lance, a professionally certified wildlife biologist and natural resource professional, college professor, and owner of Land Source Consulting. The HuntScience podcast is dedicated to bring you the latest information on popular habitat management topics, wildlife science, hunting strategies, and the general conservation and land management practices to help preserve our natural resources. Thank you for joining us today. We are excited to have you with us and hope that you enjoy today's episode. With that said, let's get started. This episode of the podcast is brought to you by our primary sponsor, Land Source Consulting. Land Source Consulting is an Ohio-based wildlife and land management consulting company that I own and operate not only here in Ohio, but through the Midwest and beyond. At Land Source, we work with private landowners just like you to build and develop those property-specific management programs to help bring the goals that you have on your property to life. If you're interested in getting more information on who we are and how we can help you, please visit us over at landsourceconsulting.com. There you can check out the different service packages and capabilities that we can provide. We would love to hear from you, so don't hesitate to reach out to us and schedule that free consultation either through our website, or you can reach out to us and connect with us on our other social media platforms such as Facebook and Instagram. That's landsourceconsulting.com, building relationships for a more sustainable future. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the HuntScience podcast. As always, I'm your host, Eric Lance, welcoming those who are new to the show and also thanking those who are returning to the show once more. On today's episode, I have a family friend and local dog trainer, Fred Calvert, who owns and operates Longshot Kennels and Retrievers here in Ohio. Fred has been hunting with dogs since he was a young boy and has hunted and trained with a vast majority of the popular sporting breeds that we know today. In this episode, we don't specifically discuss any one topic when it comes to the training of your dog, but we do give a good overview on why we train our dogs, what to expect from a training program, and a whole lot of other interesting topics I think you guys are going to find very interesting. Fred is a wealth of information and someone I turn to regularly when it comes to my pointers and training them to get ready to go out into the field and do some upland bird hunting. But anyway, enough about that. Let's get this going, and I'm excited for you to all meet Fred, and let's get this episode to begin. All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the HuntScience podcast. I got another in-guest studio with me today, a family friend of mine, Fred Calvert, who is a dog trainer and has his own kennel, and super excited to have him in here today. Fred, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. So like I was telling you, off air, is the whole point of this podcast is, I'm doing this because this kind of stuff interests me, right? Right. As a wildlife biologist, I don't have a narrow specialization. I love deer management. I love pheasant management. I love hunting both. I love hunting everything. But something I've gotten into over the past past 2 years was, my pointers, which you've had at your place.
Yep.
And when I got them, I was like, okay, I'm gonna handle some of the training as best as I could, and I got into it. I liked it. So, it's something that I've been trying to do over the past couple of years, watching videos and things like that. So I said, when I started this podcast, hey, it's a hunting podcast, right? It's a conservation podcast.
Right.
What do most people have? Whether you have a hunting dog or not, most people that are probably going to listen to this have a dog in their house. So whether it's a hunting dog or whatever, what I've learned is that there's training, similarities between hunting dogs and just regular, house pets, whether it's a, Chihuahua or Pomeranian like my daughter has, I'm not,
right.
So I'm not taking obviously that dog out, but there's still some obedience things as far as that goes. But then, really we're not going to stick too much on that today. I really want to get into kind of the hunting dog thing because I think that's where a lot of people have a disconnect. I think a lot of people can kind of figure out how to get their dog to sit.
Right.
How to get their dog to not jump on the couch, whether it's the right way or the wrong way. I think most people that take that task on probably can accomplish that, but it's the other stuff.
Right. And I got started into the hunting dogs. I was probably 12 years old and started out with beagles. From beagles, I went to coonhounds. From coonhounds, I went to bird dogs. And then from bird dogs, I kind of graduated to retrievers. But I train both retrievers and bird dogs. But once you start hunting with a dog, your focus goes away from the killing of the birds or whatever to the focus on the dog and the dog work and the enjoyment you get from, say, just one fantastic retrieve over a hunt. And it's the only way to hunt, I think, is with dogs. I mean, I used to love to deer hunt. I still deer hunt today, but I enjoy hunting things now more with dogs
Yeah.
than I do just going out and sitting by myself.
Hey man, I totally can relate to that because I've had the same. I've told my friends this. I like deer hunt now. Even when it comes to hunting, I've only got into birds, really in the past couple of years since I got my dogs. Before that, it was all deer. I didn't really waterfowl or anything like that. And I liked hunting. I enjoy hunting. I go hunting every year. I get out there when I can. But honestly, I enjoy the management side more than the actual hunt.
Right.
I still my heart starts pounding still, whether it's a doe or whatever. I still get excited.
Right.
But I enjoy setting up my stands, doing timber stand management. Like I enjoy the science behind it.
Yep.
Probably more so than the actual hunting. Back, if you were to ask me a couple years ago. But going back to what you just said about that with the dogs, I completely understand it because I absolutely love hunting with my dogs.
Oh,
like
yeah.
I took friends, my last hunt last year, I took some friends of mine. We went down on a hunt and they brought their sons, got them into it for the first time and on a pheasant hunt at a friend's preserve that we have because Ohio pheasant populations is, as not good.
No.
So that's a different podcast episode. But anyway, it's a good, Ralph has a good setup down there. A friend of mine from college, recommended me to him. And, but anyway, got down there and I enjoyed just working my dogs, picking up the cues and saying, oh, hey, they're on something, or man, it's kind of cold over here. Let's go work this area over here. They're not hitting on anything. And you get to know your dog and you get that relationship with your dog. I mean, I tell people, think of the bond that you have with your dog that you don't see for most of the day because you're at work or whatever. But now get a hunting dog that spends every waking minute of you or of their day with you, either in the house or doing what they're bred to do out in the field.
Absolutely.
That bond is just, it's so secure that like you're the only thing in that dog's life. And it's awesome.
And its ultimate goal is to please you.
Yeah.
And, this is where training comes in. We have to train them what to do so they can please us the way we want them to.
Yeah, and people hear that, like, please us. It's like, no, you don't get it. Like, they want to do that.
That's what they're bred to do. They're either bred to chase, they're bred to track, they're bred to retrieve, they're bred to point. All dogs have a purpose.
Yeah.
Dogs aren't just meant to lay in the house and look good laying there by the fireplace and play with the kids, which of course that's what all these dogs do, but they also have a greater purpose, and that is they're working dogs. They're meant to work.
Yeah,
and they love to work.
Yeah, they really do. And I got to be honest, like I said, I mean, I started, people have heard me say this. I started off in veterinary medicine, so I was around a lot of different breeds of dogs, and I would see working dogs all the time, and I never had one,
Right.
So you just I take that back. I did have a beagle black and tan mutt one time, and I'm sure Dad is probably so for those of you listening, Fred is a friend of the family. He's been a customer of my dad's business for years, since I was a kid, and I'm sure Dad's told you stories of, of that damn dog. But anyway, but even then I didn't work her. I mean, it wasn't anything that I did.
A lot of people don't know.
Yeah.
That's a huge problem, is lack of knowledge, and a lack of knowledge with working dogs. A lot of people think, okay, I'm going to get a lab. Labs love water. Labs love to retrieve. Well, unfortunately today that's not the case. I mean, you have to go with good breeding, good bloodlines. I get dogs in that people purchase from backyard breeders. We don't have any idea the ancestry of the dog. And people just think that because it's a lab, it likes water. That's not the case. Not all labs like water. Some dogs they're not very watery. They don't like to go in the water. Some dogs don't like to retrieve. This is why we focus, if you're wanting a hunting dog, we need to focus on good quality genetics. And that's where we go back to field trial bloodlines, hunt test bloodlines.
Yeah, I didn't think we were going to get here this early. We'll go on this and then we'll kind of backtrack a little bit. But yeah, it's the field trial thing. I understand it, and I I think me and you've had this conversation. I understand it, and I like watching them. I watch them on YouTube. I never did one. So, with pointers, I know I belong to all the pointer Facebook pages and things like that. And I see people doing trials. Both my daughters play travel softball. With as busy as I am, I do not have time to do a trial. Now, when my kids are off into college here in about 5 or 6 years, and as much as I enjoy being with my dogs, I wholeheartedly am probably going to do trials.
Right.
Maybe not with the dogs I have now because they're going to be, 7, 8, 9 years old by the time that happens. But I'm definitely going to have I told my wife this the other day, I'm going to have pointers till the day I die.
Right.
I love short hairs. I always have, and now that I got them, I'll always have short hairs.
Right.
But the thing that drives me nuts a little bit with it is again on those pages is I look at my boy Huck. He's as far as a pointer goes, he's built. He's very thick. He's got good stature, and he's a very, very good hunting dog. He's 100% pure blood. The mom and the dad that I got, the breeder where I got him from, trial champions, stuff like that, but a couple times, but did a lot of hunting more than anything.
Right.
And I see these people post up on Facebook, and they're like, they have a stud dog, right? And they'll have a beautiful looking colored, short hair. And then they have photos and they'll have videos of this dog going on point, locking up, doing what the dog is meant to do. But then all of a sudden, you get the people, how many trials, how many, champions. And I get where they're coming from, but it gets a little bit aggravating because you got a guy like me that, hey, I'm 2 years into 3 years.
The most important thing is health clearances.
Exactly. It's like,
here's health clearances. We need to, a lot of people are focused on the way a dog looks, and they say, is it pretty? To me, it's pretty when it goes out and does what it was designed to do.
Exactly.
I don't care what color it is.
Yeah.
I want to know that it's healthy, eyes, ears, hips, elbows, genetic disease. Yeah. These are the important things, and these are a lot of the things that you don't know with a backyard breeder. Most of those don't have the health clearances done. And then they just keep breeding and breeding and breeding more. And it's really diluted, especially the labs.
Yeah, that one definitely.
A lot of problems.
And I've seen it. I've seen puppy mill breeding, and I've seen all sorts of issues come up. I mean, I've even seen, quote unquote legitimate breeders, and people have problems because they post when you have a problem with a dog and you can't get a hold of a breeder, where do you go?
Right.
Social media.
Right.
So you start seeing this stuff and you're like, yeah, that's shady, type of thing. So I get it, but I try to just tell people, and I'll comment on there every once in a while. It's like exactly what you said. I'm like, hey, this guy has presented his OFA paperwork. He's presented a clean bill of health with the vet, all this other thing. Like, this is a healthy dog. This is a dog in the pointer. It's a healthy dog. It's a hunting dog. It's got proven. I mean, go back to the guy's profile page. The guy's been hunting this dog since it was, 6 months old.
Right.
That's what you want. Now, I get it where people want to go, but I've seen out at places trial dogs not do the greatest as far. But again, I'm not from that world. It's just an observation on the outside end to where I'm like, people put so much stock on that to where I'm getting at is the shaming and kind of like, hey, there's more to it than just ribbons.
Well, I don't think they should shame people into it, but what it does is it gives someone, say it's someone from Kansas or a long ways away. We have no idea. We've never seen the dog.
Yeah.
We've never hunted with the dog. It does give us some background to the dog that this dog is actually capable of doing the level of work, which, is my goal. That's the biggest thing behind titles and things, in my opinion. And it also shows that the dog is trainable. It has some trainability. And if you get a dog in for training whose parents have never had any training, you have kind of no idea what you're dealing with when it comes to putting pressure on the dog. The dog does great so long as it's doing what it wants, but what does it do when we start to put pressure on this dog? Like for example, force fetch. Force fetch is a very misunderstood term in dog training, for people that don't really know anything about training a dog other than letting the dog go do what it's what it naturally does. Well, why do I need to force fetch my dog? My dog retrieves already.
What do you mean by force fetch for people who listen?
Okay, so force fetch it does mean we are going to make the dog retrieve. When we say fetch, the dog needs to fetch. And why do we do that if our dog is already retrieving? Well, at some point in time, most dogs, when we put pressure on them, either for obedience or they spit the bird out, because we don't want them to spit the bird out. We want the bird delivered to hand, because what if we have a crippled bird? Okay, they spit it out halfway there. Bird takes off, flies away. We've lost a crippled bird. Delivery to hand is what we want. So we force fetch the dog. We teach them that when we say fetch, they've got to pick the bird, bumper, stick, whatever we're using for our force fetch. They've got to pick that up. And first thing we teach is hold. They got to hold it, heel, everything with a bumper. Then we go to force fetch. They have to pick the bird or pick the bumper from your hand, pick the bumper up off the ground. And okay, we've got the force fetch done. And they're like, well, I don't need to do that with my dog. It does it on its own. But you're right, it is doing it on its own, but what do we do when it quits doing that? Or especially I see it with a lot of pointers. They'll start out retrieving when they're young, and as they get older, they'll go out, pick the bird up, maybe come halfway back, spit it out, and they're going hunting again because they've done this so much, So what do we do now in that case when the dog spits out? If we haven't done our due diligence as far as training when they're young, we don't have anything to go back to. The dog was just doing that because that's what it wanted to do. So now what do we do when the dog doesn't want to do it? We have nothing to fall back on.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because my female, she's been, she's older. She's a year older than Huck. And Huck is a way better retriever in bringing back. But she's good at it too. But I've noticed since Huck really started tagging along, that she just kind of knows that he's gonna go get it,
and she's quick.
And she doesn't so much quit. Like she shoots off after that bird. She gets underneath. She'll get it. She'll bring it if she gets it. But Huck will just take it out of her mouth. Huck wants to be the one to bring it back, and she just kind of lets him do it.
Right.
It's been a while since I've hunted her by herself, so I'd be kind of curious to see how she does. But yeah. Anyway. Okay, let's backtrack a little bit here. So, tell us how you got started with this. I mean, growing up, I know your dad, outdoor family and stuff like that. But what got you into dogs?
Beagles. I got started chasing rabbits. I liked to rabbit hunt. First dog was a beagle. First hunting dog. I loved it. And we had grouse around when I was young.
I'm so jealous.
And so then I got into the bird dogs, which grouse weren't around very long. Yeah. Maybe by the time I was, 23, 24, grouse had become kind of obsolete. Or if you saw one, it was something you better write on the calendar because you don't know when you're going to see another one. So I kind of got out of the bird dogs because we didn't really have any wild birds to hunt here. And if you couldn't go to a hunt club or you couldn't travel out west to where you had birds, there was really nothing to hunt here. So I kind of got into retrievers, labs, Chesapeake Bay retrievers, because you could use them for everything, waterfowl, which you can use the short hairs and that for waterfowl, but when it gets down to the cold water and stuff like that, it's not the best choice.
Yeah.
But, and... I've just kind of stuck with that ever since. And squirrel dogs, like squirrel hunting. Squirrel dogs are a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I got friends that have squirrel dogs. I don't have any squirrel dogs because you can only own so many dogs yourself. I'd love to have all of them. I'd love to have beagle, coon dogs.
Yeah.
But the problem with beagles now, we don't have the rabbits like we used to have either when I was young.
My God, I'll tell you, my property, I have no shortage of rabbits.
That's good.
Oh my God. Well, it's good, except with my pointers, I'm trying to get them. I can't keep them from not going after the rabbits. Yeah, I call them off of it because I don't want them to get used to catching a scent of a rabbit and chasing a rabbit on a pheasant hunt.
Right.
So I'm kind of mixed because I hear, mixed information on that. People are like, it doesn't matter. They're hunting dogs. They can hunt rabbits. They can hunt. Well, I agree. I get that. But I did have last year on a hunt where, I'm sitting there and my dogs lock up, and then all of a sudden, you're in the high grass and you see the grass moving. It's like with pointers, it's like the scene from Jurassic Park, the original one, where the velociraptors are like coming in, encircling the people in the high grasses. It's like, that's
Right.
what you see when you're seeing this. And I'm like, when is this thing going to stop? Because, most pheasants are not going to run that much. They're going to, run a little bit, nest down, try to think they're under cover or whatever. It goes on for like 10 minutes, and the dogs are just going. And in 10 minutes, when you're waiting for a bird, them to go on points, you can go flush a bird, is a while.
Right.
Well, finally, rabbit kicks across the field, and the guy's like, oh, it was a rabbit. I'm like, dang dogs. So
That's why, if you're hunting in an area where you don't have rabbits, it's really not that big an issue. But, like when I was a guide on the hunt club, there was years when we had a lot of rabbits, and you don't want your bird dogs pointing rabbits when you're on a hunt with, you're running dogs on a guided hunt. These guys are wanting to get their birds. So you break them off of rabbits just like you break a hound off of deer or possums or whatever. We use electric collar, and we teach them that's not what we're here. That's not what we're after. This is not what you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, there's so many avenues. Like, part of this is like selfish. I'm like, okay, I just want to start. So kind of keep it chronological a little bit here. So let's go to the beginning here. So, someone that is listening to this and says, you know what, man, I run into it all the time. I took the dogs, like I told you, me and you and Dad were talking a little bit before this, and we were at my daughter's practice, and I have my male pointer there, and Dad has his dog, and the guy walks up and says, man, I've always wanted a pointer. I'm thinking about getting one next year. And I'm like, well, good luck.
Right.
You better know what you're getting into, man.
Yeah, very high energy.
I knew what I was getting into. Friends of mine had the mom. Like, I knew, and she is a very, very good pointer as far as temperament and everything like that. But I went on and researched YouTube and just that whole thing. But anyway, there's a lot of people that see these dogs and they're like, I really want one. So let's say someone gets one. Okay, so we talked a little bit about the importance of, making sure the breeder, AK paperwork, AKC registered, make sure the bloodline's good vet check, right? Good, on the mom and the dad, make sure all the records are in checked, OFAs, make sure all those things have been done, because from the genetic side of things, obviously issues can come about.
Right.
We could spend a whole podcast on that. But with that being said, you find your breeder, you find your dog, you put the deposit down, you go pick it up, you bring it home. Now what? So looking at that now, you got
now the work begins.
Yeah, now the work begins. So now what is it from the person at the individual level that gets that dog? What are the things that they should go buy for a new puppy? What are the things that people probably buy they don't need? And we'll work into that, and then we'll get to the fun talk about food a little bit. But, yeah.
Crate training. Crate training is of the utmost importance, and it is very important to start it at an early age. A lot of people look at crates as like you're putting the dog in jail. That's not what we're doing. That is the dog's safe place. That's where the dog rests. Dogs sleep on average 18, 20 hours a day. A lot of people will get their dogs and they'll think, especially during the pandemic, a lot of people got dogs while they were at home, and then they went back to work, and they were worried that, okay, now I'm away from my dog for 10 hours a day. Well, if you put up a camera and you video and watch your dog all day, the dogs sleep. The dog will sleep the whole time you're gone, for the most part. It may get up and get a drink, or may get up, move around, and stretch, but they mostly sleep. So, when you get a puppy, we got to crate train. We got to properly crate train. There's umpteen videos, YouTube videos, training videos on training a puppy, properly training a puppy, taking the dog outside, house training. And all that stuff is a lot of work, and, you got to be committed to doing that work. It's... my mom, she's probably one of the best at house breaking puppies. I mean, she watches them like a hawk, and she's right on them because, when puppies are little, 8, 10 weeks old, they go to the bathroom
A lot.
every 10, 15, 20 minutes, and she's always watching them, and she can tell as soon as they start to do their little circle.
Yep.
Man, she's right on them, and she can have them housebroke really quick. But there again, that a lot of that comes from breeding as well. Some of these dogs, you can spend months trying to housebreak, and you know, it's kind of a quest in futility, really.
Yeah, the obedience side of things is I think people get excited, and I know I did. They see pointers and people doing scent work, doing all different types of I don't want to say advanced, training with the dog, but not your normal obedience stuff, the sexy looking stuff, right? The dog's on point, doing that kind of stuff. But you got to, I've been around, dogs that people just can't control out in the field. I was on a hunt last year. I hunted a lot last year because, like I said, I got a pretty good relationship going on with the preserve owner. So I get to go. I go down there quite a bit. But I was on a hunt one time down there, and a guy brought his dog, and he just couldn't control it. We were finishing up, and the guide was like, "Hey," he's like, "What do you got going on the rest of the day?" And I was like, "Just gonna go home." I took the day off, and he's like, "Dogs want to hunt some more?" I was like, "Yeah, no problem." So we took them out there and started hunting them. So I mean, it's people. The obedience side of thing. I tell people all the time. I'm like, especially with pointers. I mean, they want something to do. And all dogs really want something to do, but especially a high-driven dog like a pointer. I was like 10 minutes a day. I'm like, because I'll come over. My dogs are trained, but listening when I talk to trainers like you, I notice the holes in what I did. But at the end of the day, I can control my dogs. I don't need a leash. If I took them somewhere, I can recall them. I can get them to stay with me. Things like that. But it takes 10 minutes a night.
Right.
A clicker and some training treats. And just make it, fun. I mean,
especially when they're puppies.
Yeah.
We start obedience when they're little. 3 months old, 4 months old.
It's about when I did.
I mean, as a pro, you don't really want the dog in until they're 6, 7, 8 months old.
Yeah.
That's when we start our work. But there's so much work that needs to be done up to that point. A lot of people will say, "Well, I didn't do anything with my dog because I didn't want to ruin it." And I'm thinking in my mind, you already have, because you've missed a great window of opportunity of teaching the little things. Treat training is so fantastic when puppies are little because they're really food driven. And we can teach so much with treats as puppies. And then we can carry that on as they get older. It makes the obedience and everything go so much smoother because the dog has already got a concept of what sit means.
Yeah.
What come here means. You can, they've been on a leash when, it's a lot easier to do a dog when it's 10 or 12 pounds than when they're 80 or 90 pounds.
And stubborn.
Exactly. A dog that's never been on the leash, and you get them at 9 months old, and you try to put them on a leash, you got your hands full.
That's a problem. I mean, my dogs do okay on the leash. They still pull. But, I mean, I live in the country. I mean, they have electric collars for the yard, and when I take them somewhere, they have their hunting collars on because, the vibrate feature on there is all I really need.
Right.
They know if I vibrate, it's a recall.
Right.
They just come, wherever they are, they'll come back.
That's that's another big misconception about electric collars.
That you're shocking them all the time. You're not.
No. Once I go to the field, it is very, very rare.
Yeah.
That I have to use that because it's all been done in the yard.
They know.
All my training is 90% of the training is done in the yard. Even the casting and the handling work of a retriever, all that stuff is done in the yard. And then by the time we go to the field, our corrections are very, very minimal, really.
It's usually I'll use the tone if they get a little too far, if they're getting a little bit too far away from me. My female is more of a long distance hunter. She likes to just kind of get way out in front of you, so I got to rein her in. Right. I don't want her to come all the way back, but she knows the tone from their electric fence at the house. Like, hey, that's my okay, coming back. Or if they keep going to a spot that I know it's nothing there.
Right.
Like for instance, there was one place I was at. There was actually a hawk had gotten a pheasant, and it was up in a tree Well, they caught the scent. They kept going to that tree. So I kept, not shocking them, but, beeping them. And eventually they ignored it.
And that also stems from the obedience. When you call them here, here means here. I don't care what you're doing over there. You got to come when you're called. This is another great reason why we do keep the electric collar on the dog when we're, especially hunting dogs. They're very, very prey driven. Okay, so say we're hunting somewhere and the dog is chasing something at the road.
Yeah.
9 times out of 10, a good dog is going to come back. It's that one time where, having the electric collar on may save the dog's life and save you a lot of grief and heartache.
I think the other thing too people need to take into account is that when you're training a dog young, is the dog's also training, but he or she's also learning your routine as a family. If it's a family dynamic or if it's just you, if you're single and you got the dog, like it's learning what they're allowed to get away with, what they're not allowed to get away with. They're learning the tone of your voice. They're learning, I'll with my dogs now, if I raise my voice, they pick up on other cues, body language, and dogs are very, again, a whole podcast on how they pick up on body language. They're very aware, so it's not so much they can understand something's wrong without you raising your voice.
They know if you're sad.
Exactly. So, but all that is that bond, like in the beginning, that 10 minutes a night at 3 months old, playing with your dog, watching the cues of when they're going to go to the bathroom, right? And I'm at the point now I can watch my dogs. I'll call them, they're outside playing. I'm like, hey, you don't have to go to the bathroom? Okay, it's been 10 minutes. Come on, let's go. But then I'll pick up that, okay, now she knows it's time to go to the bathroom. So she'll go and I'll bring the other 2 in. Like you just learn, the cues of the dog. And again, when you work with, and hunt them and stuff a bunch, there's nothing there. There's not there. They might be hit. They hit on something, but there's nothing there. So I'm not going to run up there as quick as I can.
And the dogs also learn that, and they also learn they can run by something. I know, and I learned this when I was younger from rabbit hunting. I'm trying to get my dog to hunt in this brush pile. It looks like there should be a rabbit in there. Dog goes around, just keeps on going, and I'm like, no, get in here. And I go in there, and I'm jumping. No rabbit in there. Yeah. So they know, they have far greater senses than we have.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just crazy when you start picking that stuff up because, they get a good hit and then you're like, oh, there's something there. They hit on something, but then they lost it. And then you feel the wind change and then they run by and then boom, their head whips around again. And you're like, oh, that's why they lost.
Yeah, just scenting conditions. You could do a whole podcast on scenting conditions and where you really learn
gives me a headache.
How difficult it is for a bird dog out in the field. You ever do a controlled burn? I'm sure you've done some controlled burn. You stand back and you watch the smoke.
Out how in much a field. It changes.
Yeah, or you'll see it look like a little tornado. It's swirling over here. Over here, it's blowing this way. This way, it's blowing this way. And, you look at that and you think, well, geez, now I see why my dog has had such a hard time. You think, well, it just ran right downwind of that bird. Well, the wind was blowing that way here, but over there it wasn't, And you can learn a lot about scenting conditions just from controlled burns and, what difficulties it's given the dog.
Okay, so let's move into, again, keep reiterating this. We can spend a whole podcast on it, but talking about dog food. So that's another thing I get asked quite a bit from people at work and things like that know I have working dogs. And I tell people all the time, like, listen, I get it. You go to any pet store right now, and it is an overwhelming decision as far as what to feed your dog. And, I tell people, I'm saying, hey, listen, most pet stores are going to carry, good foods. Yeah. Now, what's the condition of your dog? Like as far as, is it a working dog? Is it the Pomeranian that's at the house that's just a family pet or whatever? Because it's like an athlete. If you're a professional athlete, you're not going to eat the same thing as possibly, most people that are just, non-athletes, working 9 to 5 job, office worker, right? You're very particular on what you put into a dog's food. Now, if I told you what I fed my dogs, most people are going to think I'm absolutely crazy. Not as far as the food, but like with my dog. So I know you feed Victor. Is that what you said?
Victor High Pro.
So I feed Victor the high performance. On mine. It's got the GSP on there, but without getting too crazy into dog food, we'll talk a little bit about it here. But I tell people there is a website called the Pet Food Alliance. I think that's what it is. But there was in veterinary medicine, there was a study. There was a Pet Food Alliance came around, and what they did was they went around to all because what a lot of people don't realize is that all the dog foods that you see, there's only like 3 or 4 actual companies that actually manufacture dog foods. They just do so under this large umbrella of different brands.
Different names.
You know, so, I think Hershey's is a big one that does a lot of it. But anyway, what the Pet Food Alliance did was they went around to all these different pet food companies and said, hey, do you have a licensed veterinary nutritionist on staff? What's your quality control measures? Blah, 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 right? So you can go on there and type in the brand that you're considering on feeding, and you can look from the quality control, from the ingredient standpoint, because that's a big thing. You don't want a bunch of artificial crap in there.
Right.
So there are some merits on understanding how to read a food bag, and I'm going to have an episode with a sport dog veterinarian that's going to come on, and we're going to talk about that kind of stuff. So future episodes we'll get way more nerdy into that stuff. But the other thing is too is a lot of people look at that kibble and they're like, oh my God, like can't just eat kibble. It's like, no, that kibble is specifically formulated. A dog doesn't look at his bowl and go, this is not plated well.
Right.
They don't care. They don't care.
It's not pretty colors.
Exactly.
It's not multicolored.
It's food, and the thing with Victor is I went down, I guess no pun intended here, a rabbit hole, but, I was really paying attention to the food that I wanted to feed the dogs. When Timber, my female, when she was a pup, I had a couple other house dogs that weren't working dogs. And I was like, got to find a food. I'm going to feed her separately in her kennel, is what I did. And I said, I want to find a good food for her. But I started noticing that I tried foods, and I know how to switch foods. And it took me weeks and weeks and weeks. I got to when I bought Huck, off the breeder, he recommended Victor. And I was like, well, I've heard of it, but never, really gave it a chance. Ever since I switched to that Victor High Performance, all my dogs, I've never had a time where my dog got picky with their food. They've always cleaned their bowl. Dogs, all my dogs, even my geriatric dog at the time, loved it. But I didn't want to give him the high protein, things like that. So I went to the geriatric Victor blend. I forget what it's called. And but anyway, like with the Victor food, they just have always cleaned their bowl. And when you started diving in on the Pet Food Alliance, there were some companies that didn't respond. Victor was one of them. But on all the readings and looking at the labels and stuff like that, I was like, hey man, like I'm going to feed this. And I'm glad I do, because my dogs have always been healthy. They've always had energy and things like that. And that's what you look for.
Absolutely.
You're looking for what works for your dog. It's like asking someone, what's your diet? It's highly personalized. It's highly individual per the person. Dogs are the same way. If that dog food's working for you, then you don't have
Keep
to
feeding it.
Yeah, you don't have to switch just because someone else on social media is talking about Purina Pro Plan because it's got a nice pointer on the front of it. It's like, hey,
Right.
if you're feeding a good quality food, your dog's healthy, your dog has activity to work and go outside and do what it is that you want to do with your dog. Hey,
And I've fed Pro Plan for probably 20 years. And I thought I was feeding the best food that I could feed because, dog food can become an obsession, in your research.
Yeah, I was there.
Yeah. You get online at night and you look and look and look and do research. And I do think Pro Plan is a good food.
It is, yeah.
It's a good quality food. And I know a lot of guys that feed it and their dogs look great on it. I got Chesapeake Bay Retrievers, and the last couple of years, I'd noticed my female, her hair, her skin, her coat, she wasn't looking the same way that she did, before. So, you take them to the vet, you have allergy tests done, and that's why, the food takes such a long time to find what food is actually working for you, because you got to go through a whole gamut of tests to figure out what's going on.
What the allergen is.
And I've tried a number of different dog foods. I've tried Pro Plan, I've tried Joy, I've tried Victor.
Yeah.
A friend of mine, when Pro Plan got hard to get during the pandemic, I'd ordered Pro Plan and couldn't get it, couldn't find it. And I didn't want to run here, run there, trying to find a food. And as a pro, that's another thing that you have to consider, especially a lot of these guys that travel. You know, you want a dog food that you can obtain kind of wherever you're at.
Yeah.
And some of these kind of specialized dog foods, they may work great for you here at home, but whenever you're traveling all around the country, you know, like I know I got some guys that feed from that I had their dogs. Their dogs look great on this from.
Yeah.
But okay, so I'm up training up in Michigan or whatever. May not be easy to find, you know. So that's another thing that we have to consider with the dog foods. But a buddy of mine been feeding Victor since he switched from the pro plan, and we tried different dog foods and compared notes. And when you're running a kennel, one of the very important things is stool.
Yeah.
You know, a good consistent stool.
It's important.
Consistent dog food, which a lot of people that have house dogs, they don't pay any attention to that.
Yeah.
They turn their dogs loose out in the yard, and
we would see it all. We would see it all the time in the clinic.
Yeah.
You know, a dog comes with a stool sample, and it looks like someone got shot in the head. You know, in the baggie. You're like,
right,
man, okay. You know, you start looking here, and then you start asking, like, well, what are you feeding? You know, and going, you know, that route. And again, even then, you know, people get on like, I don't even want to get into it, but like these you know, raw diets and stuff like that, which, you know, I don't, again, that's the vet podcast when we actually started into veterinary medicine. But with me, with my dogs too, I spoil them. You know, I have a good base for the foundation for the food, but I'll go, you know, when I kill a deer, the liver gets saved. I don't like liver. I've tried it. I don't like it. The heart, I'm okay with it. You know, I'll eat it, but the liver, I just don't like. I save that stuff.
Right.
You know, when I shoot a duck, I save that stuff, you know, and it's just like I cube it up, I vac seal it, I freeze it. I know the temperature of my freezer. I can control the setting, thaw it out, and, you know, a day or two a week, or I'll go to the butcher and get a cow's liver. Fresh one, it gets processed. Again, I take it home immediately, cut it up into 1 pound packs, vac seal it, freeze it. It's a treat for my dogs, you know. So once a week, I'll thaw that out, put that on there. My sister has a little, we'll call it a farm, but it's like a little petting zoo,
right?
You know. But she's got ducks and duck eggs, and no one in the family really eats duck eggs. So I take the duck eggs, and, you know, I'll cook those up, or I'll just put a raw egg on the food for the dog, and
they love the shells.
They freaking love it, you know, and they love every piece of it. And I give that to the dog, and they're foaming at the mouth, and I'm like, hey, you know, for me, it's just supplemental feeding. You know, for me, it's nothing to where, you know, I get too crazy over it. But again, you know, it goes back to diet. And I used to tell people this in the clinic. I'm like, you know, you look at this professional athlete that might be a vegetarian, and you're like, how in God's name is he able to keep that physique? Hey, man, he's got it dialed in. You know, he's a professional athlete. He's got a trainer for everything. Right. But there's other guys that are hobbyist bodybuilders or just, you know, want to stay in shape. It's just on how it's at the individual level. You have to, those people have done every diet underneath the sun, and they know what works for them. And just like you're talking about taking notes, I mean, you're doing a scientific study, whether you know it or not.
Right.
Especially in a kennel, you've got a large data set.
Right.
You're looking at, you know, a larger data set's going to give you more data to relay to others and trade and correspond with and make a best educated guess. That's the idea. I mean, it's just
that's
anyway.
It's completely different when you're dealing with 1 or 2 dogs as to when you're dealing with
20.
10, 15, 20 dogs. You know, you got a lot more to work with there. Same way with the raw feeding. You know, if I was to go in there, I got 20 dogs barking at feeding time. You know, you don't want 20 dogs just frothing at the mouth, barking. You know, I got to get down through and get them fed.
Yeah.
Because, you know, that's when a lot of dogs that do have some type of underlying issue, seizures and stuff like that, because they're getting so amped up, so worked up, you know, to eat.
Yeah.
You know,
raw
feeding would be very difficult in a training situation.
Kind of cliff notes. I mean, with the raw feeding, you know, I get the methodology why people want to do it. You know, it's you look at natural again. You know, think of, you know, us as hunters. You know, being able to, you know, if you do it right. The problem with raw, there's a few major problems with raw feeding. The first is that, again, on how specific a nutritional needs are for an individual person or an individual dog, to sit there and think with no background and just to be able to go on the internet and just kind of this lump sum approach Do you know what's nutritionally beneficial for your dog? Like, are you getting enough amino acids, protein, like all the things nutritionally that dog needs? How do you know you're actually doing that? How are you sending it off to a lab, your meal that you're making, and say, hey, yes, a licensed veterinary nutritionist that is a veterinarian that is board certified nutritional specialist, they analyze and say, yeah, you're doing good. I mean, if you want to do something like that, hey, all the power to you, but go talk to someone that can formulate it so it's good for it. Everything is there.
Right.
They look at that kibble and they anthropomorphize everything to say, well, that brown kibble can't be good enough for my dog. Yeah, it's everything. If you send that to a lab, it's got, again, depending on the company, they have, board certified nutritionists that are looking at this saying this is nutritionally what your dog needs. That's why you have Victor, sensitive stomach. That's why you have Victor high performance. That's why you have Purina this, Purina that, and everything is tailored different, geriatric, puppy, high performance. Because exactly. And the other thing is too, is the kind of the health side of things. Do you know what the temperature settings are in your freezer? Is it consistent? How many hands did that meat exchange before you bought it? What was the temperature conditions at the grocery store? Was it kept properly? You start learning about E. coli, salmonella, those kinds of things. And,
right.
There's health concerns there too. So,
there's no one good
there's
answer.
no one good answer, but
it's whatever works for the individual.
And I get it. If you work with somebody to say, hey, I want to feed a raw diet for my dog. I have a farm, I slaughter, I have pigs and cattle that I take to slaughter all the time. I've got no shortage of this. I've got, I can do this the right way. All the power to you, man. That dog's going to love every feeding. That dog's going to be frothing at the mouth. They know when it's feeding time. So, I'm not against it. I just think people just have this, it's just an easy thing to get into and it's what's best for my dog. It's like, you're looking at this from the wrong perspective. Anyway, there's our food rant. So if you're looking for more food rants, get on Google, do some, go on social media and just type in, what do you feed your dog? Bam, you're going to get everything underneath the sun. But, I do plan on, like I said, bringing in a veterinarian on, and we're going to actually sit down to have
that'll be an awesome podcast.
Yeah, we're going to talk a lot about dog health, as far as, first aid kits that you should have and carry with you in the field, because your dog can get injured. I've seen plenty of dogs,
especially hunting dogs.
Yeah, pictures of dogs getting impaled, things like that. So we're gonna have a podcast on that. Talk about general healthcare, maintenance, that kind of stuff, and go from there.
Heartworm, flea and tick.
Yep.
Lyme's disease.
Yeah, Lyme, all that stuff. Yeah.
Big issue now, especially with hunting dogs.
Well, and even things like tick paralysis and stuff like that too. I mean, there's all sorts of stuff. So going into gear, another thing that I will say, and it just kind of jogged my mind. I would say, so you got to get, when it comes to stuff to go back to that, for the new person that's buying the dog. So we got the kennel, right? As far as toys, you need toys. I would highly discourage anything with stuffing in it.
Oh yeah.
Because they will especially puppy teeth. They will shred that thing to all existence. It'll look like a snowstorm.
Choke hazard,
all that thing. Anything with plastic that's hollow. I liked just something simple like the bumpers. Depending on what they were made out of. But honestly, I didn't give my dogs toys all the time. And the ones that I did, what I really, really like that we still have 3 years later, which is an absurdity to have a toy last 3 years with 2 pointers, is fleece ropes. It's a fleece. We went to some family photo shoot at a barn somewhere, and they had a little gift shop. And they had a pet table section, and there was these fleece blanket material, braided dog toy ropes. We've had those things for 3 years.
Wow.
It's a dog's favorite toys. So now, you can go to Walmart and buy, fleece material. If you know how to tie a knot and braid, and they're going to tug on that thing, and it's not going to go anywhere. It's their favorite toy.
Right.
But a toy selection is a big thing too, because like you said, choke hazard, and you might not even notice it. But the stuff we've pulled out of dogs, with obstructions and things that could have perforated a bowel and just...
They'll eat anything, especially when they're puppies.
Yeah.
They eat anything.
Yeah.
I like Nylabones.
They work, yeah.
Nylabones work really good. They're safe. They last a long time. My mom got some kind of this rubber tire,
Yeah.
and I don't know where she got it from. Menards, Pet Supplies Plus, but I don't
whatever.
know. But it looks like a tire, and she has Chessies, and they're heavy chewers. They just love that tire. He chews on it all the time. It's never come apart. But there again, with toys, I don't recommend putting toys in the kennel or any of that stuff when you're not there.
Yeah. You need to
because they can get stuck. They can choke.
Yeah.
You're just asking for trouble.
Yeah, you definitely. There needs to be parental supervision.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
You need to monitor your dog when it has that stuff.
Yeah. So with that, the other thing I would say too is start doing some research into a good harness, especially with a work. In my experience, I'm speaking from a pointer perspective. Excuse me. I had COVID a couple weeks ago, and I'm still getting like the post-COVID cough. I didn't have the damn thing when I was sick,
right.
But now I'm like just coughing all the time. So sorry if you guys are hearing me kind of pull off my head off camera and away from the mic. But one of the things too is like a good harness, and do some research. And again, the social media pages I think they do serve some value because there are some knowledgeable people on there that, like myself, I've given some recommendations for harnesses, for the dogs, because I've gone through a bunch of them, the ones that, okay, this one's a good one, but it really rubs underneath their arms, pretty raw after a hard day of hunting, it becomes a problem. So really going down there and doing some research on a good harness. And again, it's going to depend on the build of your dog.
I'm not a big fan of a harness.
Really?
And if I was hunting, I would probably never have a harness on my dog, just because that is one thing to get stuck, get hung on. Say your dog chases a bird out in the water. There's a stick underneath the water that you can't see.
That's true.
That stick gets underneath the harness, and now your dog is caught out in the water. Harnesses, and even walking your dog with a harness on, especially pointers, they love to pull. They love to pull. So naturally, when we put that harness on them, they think they're a sled dog. Now we hook that thing for them. They want to drag us around. I use harnesses, but I rode dogs. And by roading dogs, you got a four-wheeler with a bar on it. It's got chains that hang
I know
down.
what you mean. Yeah.
Okay, put the roading harness on, hook the dogs up to that roading harness, and when we're running dogs off the four-wheeler, we're not dragging them along. They're actually pulling. And you talk about build muscle. I mean, it'll really get them ripped.
See, it's like when I talk to guys like you and Ralph, I'm like, oh, yeah, what I'm doing is good. And they're like, yeah, but this, you're like, damn it. But I will say with my dogs, too, my dogs, everyone thinks of a pointer. They think of a locked on, dock jumping pointer. It's like my dogs don't like the water that much.
Right.
They'll go in there, but it's not like their favorite pastime.
Another thing to touch on real quick while we're on it is choke chains.
Oh, yeah.
And collars. Never use the choker chain or leave the choker chain on when a dog is kenneled. It's so easy for that dog
get hung up.
Get hung. Yeah. Even if they're laying in your house. I had a dog laying in the house one time. It didn't have a choke collar on, but it was laying by the register. Okay, and the little snap or ring got the dog tag slid down through the register and twisted underneath the register. So now the dog was hung there. Luckily I was there when it happened. Yeah. But there's a lot of these things that you don't think about that, until something bad happens.
So the thing with the harness with me was I saw a picture of a pointer that got impaled by a stick. Mm-hmm. And I got a thin, I think it's a Browning. It's a safety orange Browning. It's real thin, like Lycra type material, but it has a chest plate on
protector.
it. Yeah, that's all it is. And it doesn't go underneath their arms. It just Velcros underneath here. I like that one, but the other one, there was one I got from Cabela's, which was more of like a nylon, like leash material. It was orange, but not a whole lot of connections underneath the arm. The thing I like about it was my dogs seem to do better on a leash with the harness than they do with just the collar. Yeah. And I think the only reason being was because on this Cabela's one, there's a a foregrip that I can grab. So when they start pulling, I'll hold them on that, and they could walk next to me, and we'll get like a normal pace, and they're like, okay, like I get it. You don't want me pulling. So maybe it's just my dogs, but I've seen a lot of other harnesses out there. But for me, I was like, what horrified me, because of where I live, and I'm always in the woods with the dogs. Me being a biologist, like I'm in the woods all the time, and I'll take my dogs with me to work and go out in the woods. And I'm like, God, man, like, again, I got a first aid kit with me when I'm with her, but an impaling injury like that on a dog, there's not a whole lot of first aid. It's either that dog's going to be okay till you get to a vet, or it's not going to.
Right.
There's very, very low marginal room of error on an injury like that your first aid kit's just not going to do.
Right.
But anyway, okay, so let's go into training things. So what should someone start thinking about? So we talked, starting like the obedience type stuff, like 3-4 months of age. Now kind of walk us through.
Socialization.
Yeah. Let's talk about that. So what are your
biggest thing that I think anyone can do with a puppy? And that's a lot of the dogs I get in for training, people that have little kids that have raised a puppy, those are the nicest puppies to get in, because the kids spend so much time with those puppies. They're used to being handled, hugged, picked up. They're used to loud sounds, hearing different noises, and taking these dogs to different places, getting them used to different surroundings. Socialization for a young hunting dog, I think, is more critical than if we have a retriever and we're worried about throwing that sock or that paint roller and stuff for them all the time. That's natural. That's in them. We'll bring that out in them if they have it when it comes to the training time. But the socialization is the biggest thing that we can do for any dog. But, young dogs, up until the time they go to a trainer or till we start, formal obedience training, socialization, that's all the sounds, all the smells, different places, car rides. You start introducing them to car rides early. Don't wait until the dog is 8 months before you take it on its first car ride, and it gets in there. By the time you get to the end of the driveway, it gets sick, and they're not used to that. But that's the biggest thing we need to do until they're 6-8 months old, before our formal obedience, our real obedience training comes in. Up until that time, it's kind of a game. We're getting them to do it through treats and walk on the leash and things of that nature, but just socialize those puppies.
Yeah, I was just sitting here thinking, talk about, dropping a dog off for obedience. And my next dog, I'm probably going to do it just because I know my limitations. And I think a lot of people fall into this to where, I look at my two right now and really, I got to be honest, I don't spend a lot of time training, with them anymore. The obedience wise, like I said, I can control them. I take them with me a lot of places. So I guess, maybe you can call that not really training, but just kind of reiteration, consistency, type of thing, right. I guess. I'm always recalling them. Hey, get out of there. Come here. But the one thing I wanted to bring up too is kind of what's your thoughts on like the verbal commands? And the reason why I asked this was the first time I went on a hunt with Timber, my female, I kept hearing all these people, and even the guy that was there, again, a friend of mine, family friend, trained bird dogs for 30 plus years, Yep. So I went down there and he's like, what's your goals? I said, really? I don't know. Like, I can tell you I got this dog because I'm a hunter. I want something that her and I can do together. She can be outside with me. We can go on hunts. Like, I want her to be my hunting buddy, and I want to hunt, birds. So we go out there, but long story short, we started talking and she would go on point and he would say, whoa, which a lot of people say. But to me, she got a little weird because dog hears no all the time. And depending on how you enunciate, it can cause some confusion for the dog. So what I try to tell people is like, be very, kind of mindful and consistent as far as what your commands and terminology that you use, because, that could throw the dog off a little bit as well. Because if they're not looking at you and they can't pick up on body cues and things like that, and they hear, whoa, no, they might, okay, no, I don't want to do that. I'm not supposed to do this. So like I use stay. So when they go on point, I'm like, stay, because no matter how I enunciate that, or if someone else, a buddy of mine that I'm hunting with, hey, you take timber, she'll go, here's a remote for her collar. If it's interchangeable, just make sure you use, don't say whoa, say stay. Like, she's not going to get confused with that. Right. What's your thoughts on that? Am I way off base or?
Oh, absolutely not.
Dog. It's like knowing you. I'm like, oh God.
No, dogs don't know English.
Yeah.
They're learning what we teach them. You could say run, but so long as she's doing that, she's going to do what you're teaching her. What word you use doesn't matter, but you brought up a very good point, and that's something like for a retriever, we need to think about when we name our dogs, because when we release a dog on a marked down bird, we use their name. Okay, so if we use their name that's similar to a different command, we can mess the dog up because of what the dog hears. That's something we have to be mindful of. But no, I teach whoa to my bird dogs because that's what I've done for 30 years, is whoa, easy, whoa, whoa. And whoa means stop. I don't care where they're at in the field. When I say whoa, you stop, you freeze.
Yeah.
But basically what you're teaching whoa is sit. Same way with a lab or retriever or a spaniel, hup. They teach a spaniel hup. Hup is sit. What you want to use, that's personal preference.
Yeah. I just was thinking about that because, of course, we all know, well, I'm sure there's someone out there that probably thinks their dog can listen and speak English. But, that was the whole thing and I asked him and it was the same thing. I was like, I always use stay. I said, because for me, like I catch it when I say, whoa, no, like they might just be doing something like, hey, like, no.
Right.
Whoa. Like it sounds the same when I'm enunciating it. And I'm like, it's got to sound the same to them. So, I'm a little nervous when I bring my dogs out to you to mess around because I'm going to be like, oh, yeah, they're great. And these little a-holes are just running around.
They'll let you down every time.
Every time.
Every time.
But I remember when Timber was probably about 8 months old. So one of my really good friends that has about 30, 40 acres, down the road, our gun range where we go down and hunt and stuff and shoot. So I let it's 3 minutes, 5 minutes down the road from my house. So for me, we have property around us that Lutz owns, so a lot of farmland around us and woods, but it's just different area. And go down there, they can just run. There's a little creek that runs through there that's only like 1.5 feet deep, so they can go play. And I just let them go. Me and him will sit out there and BS, drink a beer, and I can see them, call them back with a clicker or something like, or a caller if I need to. Anyway, I remember she was about 8 months old where I was like, okay, this training thing's actually working. She kicked up, the beans were in on the other field. She kicked up a doe. Doe goes running and I yelled down and she just stopped and like went right down on the ground. So it's like, for me, those were the words that I worked on her with, hey, they knew like, okay, what am I doing? This is so. It just, to me, it's something I try to bring up with people because I don't think that gets talked about too much. And I watched a lot of videos on training dogs, and only a couple times I heard that, to where people were talking about the commands that you use. Make sure it's consistent. Make sure your family members are using the consistent words. Make sure they're not causing confusion with the dog because, again, they don't, like you said, they obviously don't know the words,
right? But
it's how you pronunciate them, how you're articulating that word.
Tone. Inflection.
That's the other thing, yeah.
That's one thing I run into when I get done training the dog. Okay, the hardest part is transferring that over to the owner, and for them to run the dog.
That's always the problem. It's the owners.
It is a big problem because not everybody's a dog handler. They're not running dogs all day, every day. Different dogs, they don't even notice what their dog is thinking, and I'll be sitting back watching, and I'll know what the dog is going to do before it even does it, by watching them. But it's from being with them all the time.
Yeah.
But here is what I use as recall. Some people use come. I use sit. I don't ever teach stay. That's not a command that I teach.
Get me again.
Because when I tell a dog to sit, Sit means sit.
Stay. Oh.
You know, sit. They don't move. When I tell
I
a
gotcha.
bird dog, whoa, whoa means whoa. Don't move until.
Yeah.
I don't want to have to give them two commands.
many, yeah.
Sit and stay. Why do I need to complicate this? I don't need to be complicating it. I'll say sit. Sit means sit. Down and here. We don't want to. They don't need a whole plethora of commands, because the more we're throwing at them, the more confusion that we're creating. When we're training dogs, we've got to be very simplistic and very timely in our corrections. Otherwise, we can confuse the dog. You know, like people will go to correct their dog at the wrong time, and they completely give the wrong message to the dog. The dog doesn't know why it was corrected. Our corrections have got to be very timely. This is what makes it nice with the electric collar, because we can make our corrections in a very timely fashion, whether the dog is 100 yards away or right here beside us. But before we use the electric collar, we have to properly collar condition the dog. A dog has got to be properly collar conditioned in order for us to use the electric collar. Otherwise, they don't know if it's coming from the sky, the ground, that tree that was beside them. They don't know where the electricity was coming from, and we can cause a lot of confusion, because we don't use the electric collar today like we did 30 years ago as a punishment tool.
Yeah.
Today we use it as an avoidance tool. They learn how to avoid it by complying with a command.
Yeah.
It's not a punishment tool. The collar has evolved over the last 30 years.
It's crazy.
Oh,
I mean, I'm only 38, so I mean, just in the years that I've been paying attention to them, it's night and day.
I mean, my first collars had the plugs that you plugged in, or you had to change a contact point. You know, you're out there changing the contact point. It was rather barbaric.
Yeah.
You know, when you look at today's standards.
What about, so another thing that so everyone listening is probably like a pick on air. But the other thing I did too was I try to be consistent where I want the dogs to sit. Is I'll say, you know, sit or down, but I always with sit, I would always put my hand, like, because ever since they were pups, I had the clicker in my hand, and they knew that click, if they got the click, they got the treat, right? So ever since they were, you know, even with Dad's dog, like, you know, they don't work with him, you know, that much, but when I'm over at the shop, you know, seeing him or whatever, Dad's like, he sits for you more than he does me. I'm like, well, you know, I worked on him, giving him treats, but now I'm like, hey, snap my fingers. I'm like, sit, you know, and when my hand goes up, he goes right down. It's like the cues that were, you know, for me, I was like, well, I forget what I was watching. It was a podcast. It was a YouTube video. They were talking about, you know, combining physical and verbal commands, you know, together, because how much dogs are as far as they read body language and pick up on cues and things like that. So,
well, I know if you go to an obedience competition, you'll get disqualified because that's a double command.
Oh,
see, okay, you can do that and teach it that way, but then once it's taught, then you should be able to just give one or the other.
Yeah.
Okay, so my dad, and the reason I know is my dad got disqualified in an obedience competition because he always, whenever he had the dog to go down, he went down and he put his hand in front of him, stay.
Oh, double command.
Double command, got disqualified. And he didn't even think about it.
Just normal what he did.
Yeah, it was what he did every day in training.
I always thought it'd be fun to get my dogs into like the agility competitions. Like, I thought a pointer would probably love that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I enjoy watching them. I know absolutely nothing about them.
I don't know anything about them either.
But they are pretty cool.
Yeah, they're cool to watch. Well, we have an Australian Shepherd, too. You know, my youngest daughter got a puppy, and he's he's over a year old now. He's probably like 14 months, 15 months. But it's just, I got two bird dogs, and I got an Aussie. I got an asshole. Yeah, so
right.
He's like, they're running around. He's hurting them. You know, it's just like they can't play. Well, that's another thing, too, you know, where I don't think it's going to have an issue because they still go after it. But as far as like playing fetch and stuff in the yard, you know, that doesn't go as smoothly as it used to because he's always hurting them. You know, they take off after the ball, you know, and then he's over there biting on their hip, you know, trying to herd them into a direction. And then they get disconnected from the ball, and then they start running around. So,
Right.
I don't play fetch with them as much as now, if it's just my bird dogs outside, I will. But honestly, they just like nose at the ground looking for stuff and playing. And
Now, there's a lot of
yeah.
dogs that have spent their whole life without ever being force fetched
Yeah.
and never had a problem. But basically, what we're doing with the force fetch is we're nipping that problem in the bud right at
Yeah.
the beginning. So at some point in the future, we do have that to fall back on. But there's dogs that may never need it
Yeah.
ever.
All right. So when it comes down to, now let's talk about the professional training. So now someone listen to this and they want to get into like, okay, you know what? I'm going to drop my dog off somewhere. What to expect. So what is the youngest age or whatever that someone will drop off for obedience? And what does that
6
program typically look like?
6 months.
I mean, obviously we could spend forever talking about the curriculum and stuff that you do, but in a nutshell, someone drops off a dog at 6 months. How long is a general obedience program when they get dropped off? What does the program kind of look like?
Well, dogs are like kids. They're all different. And all dogs learn at a different rate. Even dogs out of the same litter will advance at a different rate. But as a general rule of thumb, for just obedience training, I would say probably a month we can have the basics pretty well down. But the owner's got some work to do once they get home to carry on with the training. And that's no matter what level of training we get a dog to. The owners have got to be involved and they got to be interested. We can't just train a dog for a month or 2 months, send it home to the owner, and the owner never do anything with the dog and expect it to perform at any type of level when we take it hunting, because we don't know what it's going to do after the dog is sat for 2, 3, 4 months. Some dogs sit even longer than that without
just waste everything.
Yeah, I mean, they're throwing their money away and wasting our time. They need to be involved and they need to keep up with the training. And I train every week. A lot of the owners I have come out every week. And I realize people work; they have jobs. They're only able to come out to me on Saturdays and Sundays because a lot of them work. Some of them are able to come out on a Wednesday, but we go out, we work the dogs, we train. They're able to train their dogs. One where somebody is actually able to help them that knows the dog and how to fix a problem. Because one of the old guys that I'd learned from, Mr. Jim Weitzel, he always said anybody can train a dog.
That name sounds familiar. Where's he? Is he a local guy?
He's actually passed away now.
Well, was
Jim.
he a local guy?
Cleveland, Painesville. Now his son, Jim Weitzel Jr., he lives in Ashtabula County, and now his daughter Jen Weitzel, she's a third generation dog trainer. She just built a training boarding kennel in Harts Grove.
Yeah, it sounds familiar. I remember I was looking into one of the conservation clubs around the Cleveland area. Maybe it was Ashtabula that had like a bird dog training on Saturday mornings. Maybe that's where I heard the name. The name sounds familiar, but anyway,
he doesn't really have. He doesn't even train any bird dogs anymore. He's basically a lab guy. But he said, anybody can train a dog. It's, as a pro, you got to be able to train every dog that you get in. And it's amazing some of the dogs you get in for training, they just...
I tell people...
Pull your hair out.
Excuse me. I tell people, you have to go into... Exactly what you said there was, the owners have some work. When I talk to clients about, any type of land management practice, for, hunting and things like that they want to do in their property, I'm like, you have to understand that managing your property is a way of life. It's not a singular event because the habitat is always trying to advance in succession. It's always trying to go from that bare fallow field to a deciduous, mixed hardwood, old age, timber stand, right? It's always trying to do that. And it's your job as a manager to say, I want this area to be an early successional field, a prairie, whatever it is. Okay. It's the same thing with a dog. Like, I can send my dog, and I think that's one of the things why, and I just didn't know any better. That was what it boiled down to, is I didn't know any better. To where I was like, well, I could send them off, but I want to do it. Like, I can get on YouTube. I'm a smart enough guy. I can figure this out, get on YouTube and, okay, how to teach a dog how to sit. Look up 12 different people and how they're doing it and say, is there any similarities here? Because one person might have a way versus whatever, and pick something.
They probably all work.
Yeah, exactly. But there were things where I would watch a video and I would go, don't know if I agree with that. And
Right.
hey, but it's a video. I don't know if that's client's dog that's like massively trained that they're just using for a video. That I'm not wasting a couple weeks on something. I just don't think it's going to work.
Right.
These ones over here, I'm going to try these first, type of things. But for me, I'm like, I wanted that bond to be built even at a young age with a puppy. It's just like a kid. You want you want that bond. I want them to bond with me as a pup. But I started to learn it doesn't really matter. You can send them away. They come back home. Hey, you're still dad. But it's the energy that you put in the work that you are putting in with the dog when it comes home to continue what they enjoy.
And now the dog has a good foundation.
Yeah.
It's been properly collar conditioned. Now you, as the owner, have got to go get conditioned and learn how to carry on with this. And a dog will learn throughout its whole life up until the day they die. You can keep training the dog, advancing, and they will learn. And the more places you take the dog and train, like when you got a dog for a month, that's not a very long time to train, because a dog, we don't take it out and train it for 8 hours a day.
Yeah.
Dogs have a very short attention span.
Yeah.
Well, some dogs you can train for 10 minutes. Some dogs you can train for 20 minutes. Some you may be able to do it for a half hour. But they're just like kids, their attention spans are all different, and the rate at which they learn is different. But the owners have got to do the work once they get the dog home. That's the most important thing, and that's probably one of the number one problems I see, is that, one, they don't have the area to do it. Two, they don't have the time to do it. And three, they just don't have that real strong desire to
I think
train.
people overestimate their desire to want to do it. I had a guy at work one time, one of the contractors got a pointer, and hey man, there's breeders out there that got a good thing going. I mean, he showed me a picture of the dog at first, and he's like, you have pointers, right? And I was like, yeah. And I think he spent like $2,500 on his pointer or something like that, and you had to pay extra for the breeding rights, which don't get me started.
Right.
But I'm like, he's like, this dang dog will not let. I said, well, how much do you, I know you're not home very often because, you worked in the oil and gas field. This guy was in electrical utility, traveling around. And I'm like, well, how often are you like working with the dog? And I was like, I know you're not home. I'm like, so he said, this dog just doesn't listen. I'm like, well, I was like, I'll tell you what. I said, next time you go back home, I said, bring him up. I said, let me know and coordinate with me. And I said, at that time I only had Timber, my female. I said, I'll bring her down. I said, you'd be surprised, man. A dog that you really can't control, that doesn't listen, that is around a dog that is controlled and listen. I said, you'd be surprised. I said, I'll bring down a clicker. I'll bring down some treats. I said, I'll bet you, I said, we'll spend some time. I said, I bet you I can show you, at least get you further. I mean, listen, you're at the bottom of the hill. It's only going uphill. But then again, you look at a guy like that really wanted a pointer, wanted to hunt the dog. He's not home very, overestimated, his ability to actually work with the dog. And the dog is like, hey man, like,
Which
this
that
is what I
dog
do.
is a perfect candidate to be with a professional trainer.
Yeah. Highly trainable, and I worked with her a little bit to where I was like, yeah, we coordinated. I went down. I didn't bring Timber with me that day, but I have a box in the bed of my truck that has like the clicker, training treats, water bowl, food. It's got I don't have to piece it all together when I go hunting. I just have a crate or a little tote that I put in there.
Right.
So I said, yeah, so come on down. And he had it, and because he never told me he was bringing her down. So I was like, yeah, I got stuff in the truck. So we went out there, and I got her to sit, got her to come, got her to stay, and I'm like, we got to work with it. I'm like, it takes 10 minutes. When I come home, my dog, and I tell my wife and kids this, you get complacent. You have the dogs, right? But you got to understand that you are everything to that dog. Like, especially when you have working dogs, like, You know, my two bird dogs, like, honestly, they love my kids and my wife, but if they weren't there, they would not care.
Right.
like I am their world. If I am on the couch, they're on the couch with me. If I get up and walk around, they're with me. Like, if I go to the bathroom, they're outside the door waiting for dad. Like, they're just, and if the door's open, they're sitting in front of you staring at you. And it's like, get out, you know. But when I come home and let them out of the cage, I go outside with them for 10 minutes. I just give them attention. Like, hey, come on. You know, they'll go, I'll pull them off. I'll get them to come to me. I'll rub their belly. I'll, you know, play with them, get them to sit, you know, whatever. They're just crazy excited to see you. It's like, you should want to do that. Like, if you go down this path of getting a dog, you're going to, especially a breed like a pointer, which I'm sure you can attest to, if you're not working with that dog, you are going to have serious issues with that dog.
Bouncing off the wall.
Destroyed couches, you know, and things like that. And again, you go to the social media pages, you see this, which is another thing I recommend people to do, in all honesty.
And then they want to start medicating the dogs.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And that's so unfair to the dog, because the dog isn't getting
what they need. Yeah.
The dog, in my opinion, the dog isn't being properly cared for, because they're getting a working dog. Therefore, the dog needs to be working.
Yeah. I did this, you know. Our friends had the mom, so I mean, we were around a pointer. But again, they would even admit she's a great dog. I mean, she's very, you know, good temperament, you know, has a lot of energy, but, you know, not obnoxious. You know, it's just they got really lucky with her. When we were thinking about getting one, you know, I joined the pages, and I just scrolled through, and you see all the mishaps that people have with pointers. They come home, and why do you leave your dog out? You know, like, I don't care how well your pointer is. Like, you can't trust a pointer loose by themselves as far as you can throw them.
Really,
Yeah,
any dog should be supervised.
Yeah, but I'm just like, you know, I mean, hey, I've had dogs in the past where we left out all day and they never did anything. You know, I'm sure there are dogs that are out there, but that is not the norm. You know, but you get on there and you see the things that people are complaining about and stuff like that. Know what you're getting into. Like, ask the question, like, hey, I'm new to this group. I'm thinking about getting a pointer. You know, what are your guys' thoughts? You know, I have 2 kids, I have 3 kids, 4 kids, I have no kids. I live by myself. I work 9 to 5. You know, is it possible to have a full-time job and only be able to, you know what I'm saying? Like, kind of get it in there and make sure that you're a good fit for the dog, not just that the dog is a good fit for you.
Right.
Because like you said, you can send it to a professional all you want. All that work that if I send a dog to you and I get it back and I don't do anything for 2 months, all that work you did is just gone.
Right. And it doesn't take long.
Yeah.
We're only talking, you know, you only got to work with the dog a few minutes a day.
Yeah.
You know, just
10
to
minutes.
keep up with it.
At most.
You can even do it while you're sitting in the house.
I did it
mean,
half
do
the
a
time
little
watching
bit.
TV.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It doesn't take a long time. Just some interaction between you and your dog, and making the dog listen. You know, it's not a free for all where the dog just does what it wants, when it wants, how it wants. There's got to be some structure in the dog's life.
Yeah, just, you know, I mean, I remember sitting there just in the living room floor, just like sit, stay, and then I would walk around the corner into the kitchen, and if they broke sit, I'd go back. I'd get them to sit, and they wouldn't get a treat. You know, it's like stay, and then they would do it. They'd get a click, and they get a treat, and it's just like it takes patience, but it takes 5-10 minutes. Right. You know, like it wasn't something like you said you're spending an hour on. You know, not something you're like, all right, let's put our muck boots on, let's put clothes on. I mean, you can do it in your underwear.
All right. Yeah.
Sitting in the living room, you know, watching Netflix. Be like,
and that's even a really good thing to do while you're sitting there watching TV. Have the dog sitting there beside you and make them sit and be still while you're watching TV, working on some steadiness. Because as trainers, I don't have time to go out here and sit for a half hour, 45 minutes, an hour, like we do in a real hunting situation. You know, I'll have a lot of guys call me, well, he only wanted to sit there for 15 minutes, and then he wanted to get up and walk around and smell. I'm like, well, yeah, that's pretty normal. Wouldn't you want to get up and walk around and sniff too? I said, this is where you have to carry on with the training in the hunting situation. And no matter what training is done, we can never fully emulate a hunting situation. You know, the excitement, because the dogs feel the excitement, the rush of that pheasant flushing or the Hungarian partridges flushing or the ducks coming in.
It's so awesome,
the,
man.
the geese coming in and they're like, oh, wait, here they come. Get ready. You know, the dogs start to feel all that
tension and
anxiety. And then,
excitement.
oh, the dog breaks and they're like, I don't know why it broke. This is why you have to, when you first get a dog back, you can't really focus on the shooting. You might as well leave your gun at home. Take another person with you to do the shooting. You need to focus on the dog. You need to focus on the training and what needs to be done. And then after you do that for a season, okay, we're getting there. We're home free. But, you know, at the beginning, that's what we have to do.
Yeah, we're going to get to that. So funny story, talk about that. So like I told you, I've avoided waterfowl hunting because, it's hard to find a place to do waterfowl that there's not 30 other people that are going to go there. So for me, I don't like people enough to be around. Like, I'm like, listen, something bad's going to happen. So I just kind of got away from it. You know, our friend of mine that has the female, the mom to our dog, you know, he lives here in town, lives off the river. He's got 11, 12 acres, whatever it is. And he's like, hey, you want to go duck hunting with me on the river tomorrow morning? I was like, yeah, I know where this is going. I'm like, we're going to get ducks and I'm going to be hooked. It's a problem, you know, and that's what happened. So fast forward, you know, later in the winter and we're going goose hunting, you know, and so his pointer is a little bit gun shy, you know, and he's trying to, you know, get her back. But we take her out to that field, my buddy's farm. All the corn were cut. It's flooded out there. It's got a low-lying area. I mean, it's a perfect little spot. So we're out there. Again, us two knuckleheads don't really know what exactly we're doing as waterfowl hunters, right? Especially with geese, calling geese. So we're out there, and I can't remember exactly the situation, but I remember us sitting there in our little makeshift blind, and he's got his dog, and we see all these geese coming in, and our heart's going, man. We're calling, you know, sounding probably like, you know, dying goose or whatever. But there was a bunch. I mean, there was probably like 30 ducks. I mean, we're like, oh my god, like it's in the evening. This is happening.
Right.
Well, we got excited. Dog got excited. These geese were coming in. Dog got excited, bolts out into the field, like, where are they at? You know, and it's just, those geese just took off. And we're like, oh, you got to be kidding me. Right. You know, but it's just funny because, you know, I mean, you take a high-strung dog like a pointer that, you know, they're really, I kind of have mixed feelings about trying to waterfowl hunt with my pointer. I know people do it, but, you know, it's just a lot more training because it's kind of counterintuitive to them if you don't train it. Right. To where, you know, because I see my buddy's lab. My buddy, you know, went through and learned how to be a trainer. Doesn't do it professionally or anything, but he learned how to do it. He would like to do it. Just he's got 4 kids. But his dog, when he learned, he sent his lab off, and he paid a lot of money for it. And I went duck hunting with him with his dog. I'm like, oh.
This is the way it's supposed to be.
This is the way it's supposed to be. Like, I would spend this whole time trying to get my dog, come here. You know, the ducks are flying, like, sit still. You know, that dog's just sitting there, man. Just wait. You know, it's like, oh, I get it. Yeah. Yeah, I get this now.
Yeah, they all have their purpose.
So I call my wife. I'm like, so I want to get a lab. She's like, no. You can use Danny's. Make sure Danny's with you.
Yeah, but, and that's one of the things why people need to really consider what breed of dog they get.
Yeah.
You know, you need to really think about, what am I going to be doing with this dog? Am I going to be doing mostly waterfowl? Am I going to be doing mostly upland? Is it mostly going to be a family dog?
Yeah, or all the above.
Or all the above.
What are your thoughts on, you know, I love the short hairs, you know, but my buddy's got a wire hair pointer. And, you know, I've never really been around any other ones besides his. And I know people, obviously you can use them for upland bird, but I remember we were out there toward the cold, like winter, whatever, and, you know, my dog wasn't really going in the water, but that dog, just from the water standpoint of, I'm like, okay, if I got something like that, I'm like, I could definitely have the upland. And I know you can use labs for upland as well, but I mean, pointers that's what they're bred for. To have that ability to have a cold water dog, I'm like, I could get into that a little bit. What's the other breed? It's like a wire hair. Oh God,
the Griffin.
The Griffin, yeah, but there's another weird one, man. I saw one at
Poodle Pointer or Puddle Pointer.
No, it looks almost exactly like a wire hair. and it wasn't a griffin. I remember I asked the guy, I'm like, oh, it's like, from a distance, I thought it was a wire hair. So I got close, and I was talking to the guy. I wasn't really looking at the dog, and I was like, guys, like, my buddy's got wire hair, and he's like, oh, this is a
Munsterlander.
Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah, that's what it was. And I was like, oh my, I was like, okay. I'm like,
Well, the problems you start getting into when you get into all these
yeah,
wild exotic breeds is, finding the quality animal that, not saying that they aren't out there, but
It
you're
just
going to have
becomes
to do
harder.
a lot of research
yeah.
to
But
get what you want.
going back to a wire hair, I mean, how hard is it to go and take a dog from upland and also do waterfowl? Because there is some contradictions there, because an upland dog, you want the nose of the ground. You want the dog catching wind and searching. Waterfowl, you don't want that. That dog's got to be right there,
I have never, and I've had short hairs, English pointers, English setters, but I always used them just for that.
Yeah.
Upland game, grouse, woodcock, pheasants, what have you. And when it came to duck hunting, I always had a lab
fine.
or a Chessie.
I'll just blame you when I come home with a lab.
And in my opinion, probably your best all-around dog, if you're just going to have one dog and you hunt multiple species, a lab.
Yeah.
That's probably your best, because
I've heard that.
A short hair in cold water,
They don't like it at
probably
all.
not going to like it.
Yeah.
And do they use them on waterfowl? Sure, I've seen guys.
Yeah, I've seen it
use
too.
them, but I never have. I mean, I've had birds go in the icy water when I was guiding hunts. The dogs will go in and get that pheasant.
They'll break the ice up. A big lab will break the ice up.
Well, I mean, I had short hairs go out and get it.
Oh, yeah.
But would they go out and get 30 or 40 of them?
No.
Probably not.
And that's not going to be. It's not good for them in overall health. Their coat's not sustained to do that for an all morning hunt.
No.
Going in and out, in and out, in and out.
Right,
Like
or swimming out there and then having to sit there and
Yeah.
you just sit there shivering, teeth are cracking.
Just shiver.
Yeah.
Let's go into shot training. I know we kind of touched on the obedience thing. I mean, it's pretty much, I would assume, how people think it's going to go. Drop it off. You're going to work, sit, stay, come, that kind of thing, just every day. But now you start getting into more of the specialized hunt training. It's like, how do you approach the shot training? Because, again, I think I just got lucky with this one, because me and my buddies, we shoot so much, like pistol, AR, long range. And, I would just take them out there, and Timber, my female, spooked her, for a little bit. But after maybe 4 or 5 shots, and I knew going out there is I had the clicker and the treat. I made sure I wasn't like real close to her, because that's a lot. But as she was like out in the bean field or just maybe like 50 yards away or whatever, I'd tell my buddy, like, hey, with a pistol, like, pop a shot off. And she'd panic. I'd be like, come here, and I would, hey, everything's fine. Like, come here, and I'd have her toy and throw her toy, and, and then after maybe like 3 shots, she didn't care anymore. Now I know that's not the best way to do it. So that's why we're here. What's a good way for people to start shot training their dog?
For pointing dogs, the way I do it, I like pigeons for training pointing dogs. I know you'll probably talk to people that don't use pigeons, don't like pigeons. I love pigeons for training.
They're everywhere.
They're usually cheap to get.
Yeah.
Usually, not this year, but usually they're cheap to get and they're abundant. But what I do, first thing when you get a pointing dog, a dog has got to learn to point. Okay, they've got to learn that they can't catch the bird. Okay, so what we do, a lot of people use the pole and the wing and stuff when they're puppies, and we'll get them to just start pointing. Take them out in the field, put birds out, and I got launchers that I put in. I'll be able to tell as soon as that dog gets a little bit of that scent, release that pigeon, okay? The bird is up flying in the air, the dog is chasing it. When that dog is chasing, use a cap gun, 22 blank pistol, some kind of a blank pistol, put it behind your back, pow. You might see the dog stop, turn around and look or whatever. That's fine, don't do it again. Take it back down through the field. You got another pigeon out there in another trap. Do it again. That's how I start introducing gunfire.
Now, what if you don't have pigeons, though? So you got a guy just has 5 acres, goes over, whatever, the blanks,
You need to do it while the dog is having fun. They need to learn to associate gunfire with fun.
Yeah, and that's what
we don't want to do it as a surprise to the dog. We don't want the dog to just be. I have guys come to me and they'll say, "Yeah, I took the dog out and had her sitting there beside me, and I shot the 12 gauge up in the air to see if it was gun shy." And I'm like, "Oh my god!"
You scared the crap out of the dog.
Yeah, what would happen to you if you had absolutely no idea what was going on? Because they don't.
They don't.
They're just sitting there, just looking around, and all of a sudden, boom!
Yeah.
That if it wasn't gun shy, it probably is now because of what you just did.
And that's what we did too. Is I remember that day. Everything was down, and we were out there doing that. And I said, okay, let's get the thrower out with some clay pigeons, And I said, before we even shoot, let's just launch a couple, And then she would run out after, and became a game. And I say, sit. I'd get her to stay. Then we'd launch one, and then I'd let her to go get that thing. And I'm like, okay, now let's shoot one. First couple, she's like, whoa, like what was that? But after a couple, I'm like, okay, do it again. And it took maybe 20 minutes, and it was her favorite game in the world.
Right.
She didn't give, but I didn't do it up close. I waited, I wasn't doing the shooting. I had my buddy, do the shooting, another buddy do the pull. And, I said, guys, let's just do me a favor, 20 minutes. I just want to work with her a little bit. And we were over there, and I was with her, like I said, about 50 yards away. I'm working commands, stay, you're not going yet. And I'm like, go get it. Again, that was my command, not her name, like, go get it, and she, boom, take off after it.
Right.
But that way she would come back with a piece of it if they hit it, and I'd give her a click, and I'd give her a treat, rub her belly a little bit, and then get her back on sit.
You could do that with bumpers.
Yeah, I used to use the bumper too. Yeah.
Okay, you got somebody go out in the field, throw it, a cap gun or a blank pistol, something that's not real loud, something that's not real harsh. Start off with that, work your way up to a 410.
Yep.
And then once you got that done, you pretty well got it made.
Yeah, and I'll tell people too, so with my male, I did it a little bit different. So with my male, again, I told you when everything's down, cropped and cut in that field, it's flooded. Only gets like 1.5 foot. It's not very deep, but it's my dog's favorite place to go play because they just can go run around like idiots out there.
Yeah, I've seen that on Facebook.
Oh yeah, you saw the video. Yeah. So, but that's what we did out there is because you can buy blanks at most, gun shop, Cabela's, Bass Pro, they sell them. Amazon. Yeah, they're not expensive. They're more pricey now. But no one's really out there buying it's just because they're not making them. But I have a couple hundred. I just stockpiled them. I went through quite a bit, but with him was the bumpers out in that water. They were playing, both the dogs were out there, kind of feeding off each other's energy. And Timber didn't care about the gunshot. And when he saw oh, she's not worried about it. Oh, okay. So I would just throw it. I would have a 12 gauge blank, boom, shoot it. It was even less time. And I've never once had my dogs cringe anymore. And they've been right next to me. Flushing the bird, they're on point. You're right there by them. For me, again, not traditional, but, kind of the approach with people. So, yeah, the blanks are a good way. I tell people, even if you don't have blanks, which you can get them, that's the better way to do it. But definitely make sure the dog's not close to you. Like you said, that is a horrible way to do it.
Pots and pans in the house.
Loud noises, yeah.
Loud noises in the house when they're little. Just so they get used to sounds. They get used to noise.
And like you said, being around young kids, I think, kids are always getting mad and throwing stuff down on the ground or, screaming and, those high-pitched sounds. I'll tell you what, the one thing, and get your opinion on this, the one thing, I got to upgrade my collar system here because I've got the Australian Shepherd, my daughter's dog, and actually I think I might at some point bring him out to your place after I get my dogs there for a little bit. I think he might actually be a pretty good flushing dog. I know it's typically not what they're working to do, but doing scent work with them out in the field, my dogs are going point, and he comes in like, what do you guys got? And just coming in there like rooting his nose around will flush a bird. There might be something there. I bought my daughter a 410 because I asked her, I said, would you be interested in going hunting with Dad? You know, I've always given them the opportunity to go deer hunting with me, and if they want to go, they can go. I've never pushed it. I've always offered, and they're like, yeah, well, maybe we'll try it, you know. But with the pheasant thing, I see how close my daughter is with her Aussie. I said, would you want to go? She's like, yeah, I think I'd give it a try. So I bought her a 410. But
Gonna get her hooked.
I know. Damn, where was I going? Where was I going with that?
You're gonna go with spending more money with that because she's gonna want to.
Yeah. I lost my train of thought. I don't know where I was going with that. But you know, going with that, I noticed that I'm like, I think he might be a good little flushing dog, you know. But anyway, maybe it'll come back to me.
I've seen guys, you know, on some of those pheasant sites, they use shepherds. You never know. It could be any dog. A lot of dog training is just teaching a dog good habits.
Yeah.
Repetition of good habits. You know, just keep doing it, keep doing it, keep doing it. Some dogs catch on after a few days. Some dogs catch on after a few months. But if you keep doing it with the dog and the dog shows some form of desire and then they see that you're enjoying it and they're doing now something to please you, I don't see why you couldn't use the dog.
Yeah.
The only thing I wouldn't like about it is the burrs.
Yeah.
Cockle burrs.
Oh my God. Yeah.
That's the only. That's
bad.
one of the reasons why I
Yeah.
don't like a long-haired
It's bad.
dog.
I mean, even back where I live, the landowner back there, I asked him, I said, hey, it's just a scraggly area. I said, do you mind if I mow back there? Take the dogs back there, but I mowed like little patches so I can do like scent work and stuff in there. But yeah. Oh, I know where I was going with this. I was going to ask you. So upgraded my collar. So I got the Upland, the Delta Upland Pro, you know, from Garmin.
Yep.
And they have that on the back of it, the thing that will screech like a hawk, or it'll like a beep thing. My God. I mean, that thing is obnoxiously loud. I'm like, I know there's probably a lot of dogs that use that, but
Freak a dog out the first time
it freaked, especially when it's attached to them
Right.
and they're running around, because it goes to where I hear people talk all the time about like bells on the collar, and everybody has their own little remedy, a little carabiner with a cowbell or a jingle bell from a Christmas decoration. I mean, I've heard everybody from everything underneath the sun. So I get why they have it. I just bought a bell off Amazon, and honestly, I don't even really use it because I don't know. Where I hunt, even on public land, they're never far enough away from me where I don't know where they are. Like I can see where they are. I see the grass moving, you know, but I do need to start getting them used to it. That I do have plans on going to Kansas and Iowa and places like that. So I do need to get them on something like that where I'm not as familiar, but which is also.
I would probably go with something more of like the tracking.
That's where I was going to go. I told
now.
my wife I want to update my collar system that has the screen that shows me where the dog is,
Exactly.
rather than that bell.
And
you know?
I don't know what model that is. They'd have to look. I know it's Garmin makes
Yeah,
it.
Garmin makes it. I've got it saved on my Amazon.
I don't have that, but if it were me, that's for you. That's
Yeah, if I go out
Definitely
any
what I would
place
have.
where, you know, I like the Delta Upland that I have. I love that collar system. I took that hawk screeching thing off of there. I love they make the Delta Pro and the Delta Upland Pro. I think you have to look this up, people, but the only difference is the Upland Pro has that beacon on the back of it. I mean, I would just
the only thing nice about a beeper.
tells them when they're on point if you can't see them, but
Well, the bell is great so long as the dog is moving.
yeah,
When are we usually looking for the dog?
when they're pointing and not moving, and you don't
They're
know
not
where they are.
moving,
Yeah.
and the bell is not.
Well,
ringing.
that's what this thing did, is it went on beep when they were pointing, so you could identify them. But I'm
Right.
like, again, I know where they are, you know, and that was one of the things Ralph got on me about the first couple of times I hunted with him. He's like, hey man, make sure you stay with your dog. He's like, you can't let your dog get too far away. You got to know where your dog is at all times. For its safety. If you're with other hunters, you don't want them getting shot and everything like that. So it's just something that I've just done since day one. I'm like, they don't normally get any more than, I would say, 50 yards away from me before I'm like, hey, we're working that way. Come on back here in case you miss something, but we'll get there here in a minute.
But see, your pointers were actually bred to get out.
Further, yeah, I know.
Yeah, they were get out there,
Far.
100, 200 yards.
And I see people that do that.
Most of your dogs will, and again, this comes through time, they will hunt according to the cover that you're in.
Yeah.
Okay, if we got thick, heavy cover, your dogs will hunt close. If we got a big open area,
Yeah.
do we want the dog hunting right here in front of us? No, I mean, it's kind of
There's-
pointless. We want them out
Yeah.
searching.
There's a preserve that I like to go and take my dogs to. They've got really good habitat. They do a really good job. They've got a nice mixture between, timber stand areas, prairie areas, wetland areas, low marshland areas. And the other thing is they keep you up at the house, up at the cabin, and then they go release the birds, come back and get you, and you got to walk about a mile in. So your dogs, even though it's on a preserve, the birds are released. Like, your dogs are hunting. They don't know the difference,
Right,
So
right.
they're out there. They don't see where the birds are getting dropped off. They just, when I pull into that place, my dogs go nuts. They know
Know where they're
they
at.
know where they are. They're like, let's get this party going. Like,
Right.
Yeah. But okay, so shot training. Yeah, and then as far as dropping a dog off for, what are the different options that people can look into, as far as, actual hunting specific training? Like, I'm sure that, the recommendation for there is probably longer than a month, I would imagine,
Absolutely.
depending on what it is. But
And you also have to know what your goals are, like you had said earlier. What are your goals for the dog? What do you want to have done with the dog? What do you plan on doing with the dog? And, for a pointing dog, it's probably going to be 2 to 3 months just to get the dog steady to shot. Okay. That's not any, I'll fool with them on the retrieving part, but that's probably not going to be force fetched. We could probably have hold done by then, but they're going to know what a bird is. They're going to be steady to shot. We shoot. And in my opinion, for a hunting dog, that's kind of what I'm wanting. They'll see, okay, we shoot a blank, they watch the bird fly off. But when they see the bird hit, go ahead and take off, get it, pick it up, bring it back. I think that's the best for a hunting dog. I realize for field trial dogs and stuff like that, that's not what they're looking for. But for your basic hunting dog, once you get them to that point, and you're looking at probably 2-3 months, depending on the dog for that. Now, retriever, there again, depending on if we're just to get our basics down, you're looking at probably 3-4 months for doing singles, doubles, force fetched, and I'll have some of the handling work started, but that's probably not going to come until the next year. Get a season under their belt, then we'll start the handling work, the hand signals, blind retrieves, things of that nature.
Yeah, I remember when I started, I just was like, well, again, and I think there's nothing wrong with this, as people like myself, where I was like, hey, I'm not going to hunt all the time. I'm going to get out as much as I can, but there's times where my dogs go on point and they might take a step or two. Like, I don't jump their crap, when they do that, because I'm like, hey, at the end of the day, if I go out there and get 10 birds released or 20 birds, I think only one time I've walked away, not 100%. And like for me, even going out to the public land, I went out to the public land, and a couple times I got there like pretty late. But going out there the day of or the day after, because really they release them like in the evening, and then you go out there the next day. There's been times where I've gone out there and I've watched, 20 guys walking up this easement, and then with like 6, 7, 8 dogs. And I'm like, well, it opens up there, just go up there, and then boom, I limit out. They miss it. Now, there's a lot with that, like we talked about earlier. The scent cones and scent conditions and stuff like that can drastically change. But I'm like, I go out there, I'm like, my dog's alert, they point, I can control them, they bring the bird back. Like Huck the male, I kind of jumped his crap the last hunt on public land, because I shot this bird and I lost. There was a sumac that was growing up, and I lost where the bird landed, and it was pretty thick in there, multi-floor rose, blackberry, high grasses and things like that. And he was fiddling around over there, And I'm like, come on, like the bird dropped over here. And I'm like, what are you, he wasn't listening. I come over and he's got the bird,
Yeah.
and he's like, he's trying to get it out, from underneath he's getting his nose scratched up a little bit. So he's trying to like find a way to get the bird. And I'm like,
then you kind of feel stupid.
I feel
then,
stupid. I'm like,
yeah.
sorry, bud, because, it's stuff like that. But
Yeah, you got to trust the dog's nose. Their noses are phenomenal.
yeah. Anything else we need to cover? I'm trying to think through my head here. Yeah, I want to get out there too, so people listening, let you know too. So I have something that I'm going to be doing with the podcast. I don't have it started yet. In all honesty, it's probably going to be sometime the first of the year before I really get into it. I'll probably start filming some stuff before then, but as far as getting it edited and released. But I started this thing. I've already got the back end set up. I just got to get content called the HuntScience Academy, and I want to do some videos on there. And do some YouTube video stuff, some free stuff for everybody, but coming out to your place since you're close, and people can film my failures, my dog screwing up, but then also get like your dogs out and be like, we can talk about, some things. I think that would be good content for people. People always like that kind of content, even though there's a lot of it out there. Hey man, having a lot of content out there is not a bad thing.
No, it's a great thing.
Yeah, it's just like, there, like I said, there's videos I watch with these really, really high-end trainers. And I'm like, yeah, those are awesome videos. They're produced well and everything like that. But, like, I enjoy this guy's videos over here, too. He's got a freaking cell phone camera with his wife that's shaking.
Yeah.
The quality's not that good. But you're like, oh, man, like, okay. Like, that guy.
It's something anybody can do.
Yeah.
I mean,
and
you get to involve your wife, your kids, your family.
Not to take anything away at all away from some of these big level trainers and stuff like that. The more they do, the more they invest into high quality cameras. I mean, the more viewers they get, like we were talking about. And I mean, they can put a good production on. But I mean, to me, there's something about like the local guy, like I said, Ralph, that, when I first got my dogs, I went hunting with him. Guy, the old school guy that doesn't advertise, it's word of mouth. He's been doing it for 30 years. He's trained multiple trial champions. He's been hunting birds for 30, 40 years, and it's like those are the guys. I had an episode on here with a trapper, and his name's Glenn. And, Glenn has been around, and he's been trapping for 40 plus years. And you go to his Facebook page and it's just fur. Just like, you're like, oh, okay, guy runs a set in a night and he's got, 25 coyotes. You're like, okay, like we're going to talk some trapping, and I'm going to have him on to do some sets and stuff like that, to talk about that kind of stuff too. But yeah, I figured that kind of stuff would go well. But I was trying to think, as we were talking here, what all we didn't really cover, because I know it's hard to like go, hey, what's your program for hunting dogs? I mean, like you said, it's just get people an idea, because I know when I started, I would look it up and people are like, yeah, it's a 3-month program. I'm like, I don't really know what all that entails. Like, I'm just dropping your dog off to some guy you don't even know, but to actually like, hear somebody and talk with somebody and you just more comfortable and like, should I do this? And I look back on it now, I should have,
Well, and when I think a lot of people talk about programs, there's a lot of different styles of training, a lot of different trainers that they've followed, but I think they've all kind of stemmed from Mike Lardy, his training program. I think pretty much all the training programs today kind of stemmed from that. Everybody puts their own
little flair on it,
flair to the way they want to do it, their own little maybe shortcuts, or maybe they don't do this because they found they don't need to do that. But when we talk about a program, all programs are different and need to be catered to the dog. We can give you a rough idea of how long things are going to take, but and that's basically all it is a rough idea. It's an estimate.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and that's how it has to be, because I mean, I think if someone tells you like, oh, this is my foolproof way for any dog, I think they're kind of blowing smoke up your butt.
Yeah, there is none.
Yeah, there isn't. Because I mean, again, in by no way, shape, or form would I even ever consider myself a trainer at all. But like, I mean, even just training my 2 dogs, like what I did with my first one versus my second one, I'm like, yeah, you learn from every dog. You just have to change it up. It's like, I get, but he's not responding to this. let me try it this way. And I'm like, I don't know if this works or not, but it worked for him. So I'm like, okay.
And that's all that matters.
Yeah, you're like,
You talk
all
to
right.
20 different trainers, you're going to get 20 different training
It's
methods.
the same in my world. It's like you look at how do you put a food plot in? I mean, it's like, listen, there's only so many steps to planting something, and it's like, well, I do this and this. Okay,
Right.
good for you. Like
Same way with welding.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
You talk to 100 pipeline welders.
Yeah.
You are going to get 100 different theories on pipeline welding, and you're still welding the pipe from the top to the bottom.
Did it pass or did it fail?
Yeah, exactly. Does it pass X-ray? That's all that matters. You know.
But yeah. So what all is your setup now? So describe your setup a little bit. Close off what you got going on. Like I said, for everyone listening, you've already heard it by now. I'll have everything in the introduction. I'll get all the information off of you as far as everything, and then that'll all be in the introduction. So you don't have to go too crazy, but what do you got going on? So like I said, you were a pipeline welder for years. You've been done semi-retired for 2 years, trying to do this full time. So
yeah, I started out training dogs, working at a hunting preserve when I got out of high school. And it just wasn't a very lucrative job at that time. And I knew in order to get to a level, I was going to have to do something to make more money. So the pipeline industry was great because it was getting full-time pay for part-time work. I could work 6 months and have 6 months off.
yeah.
And I would be able to, and it was mostly summer work. So I'd be able to get home in time for hunting season. And so the pipeline work hasn't been that great the last few years. So I said, well, we'll get the kennel going early. And I built a kennel. I got a 18-dog kennel, all indoor kennel built. I'm boarding dogs, training dogs, gun dogs. I got 33 acres there. My mom, dad, brother, we all live there. So altogether we got 54 acres there. And I got it basically set up for training gun dogs. I got training pond, technical pond. I got another pond that's a little bigger that I can work for puppies. And then I keep my field out back mode for bird dogs, training bird dogs and retrievers, doing land work. But I also train in different areas. I have a few trainers that I train with. One that I train with pretty frequently, about every week, is Jen Weitzel, who we talked about earlier.
Oh, okay.
It's really good to take your dog to different areas to train. They can perform flawlessly here in the yard, but what about when we take them to this area?
There's new smells.
This area. New dogs. They need to be worked around different dogs. We need to do our obedience where, okay, she's over here doing her obedience and I'm over here doing my obedience. So we're kind of killing two birds with one stone. She's getting some training in. I'm getting training in. And she's got some really nice training areas to train in. So it works out really good. But I run my dogs off four-wheeler twice a day. I take them out around my property. It gets them stretched out. They go to the bathroom out in the field, so I don't usually have to worry about picking it up in the kennels and stuff. I'm going to have an airing yard put in. They're supposed to be putting it in this week. They haven't shown up yet where I can let the dogs out into the yard. But most of my dogs I take out back because they're mostly hunting dogs, trainers, and I take them out back and run them. We have a good time, train. And that's kind of the way it is for now.
Nice.
I mean, I'm hoping that I don't have to get into the field trials.
Yeah.
Hunt test circuit.
The problem is that's a double-edged sword. Is it's a way to get your name out.
It's a way to get your name out, but it takes up a lot of your time, and a lot of your average guys, they don't want to spend that extra money on hunt tests and things of that nature. They would rather save that money up to go on a hunting trip to Iowa, Kansas, South Dakota. I know that's kind of what I would do, being a hunter. You'll find that a lot of your people that get into your hunt tests and stuff, they're more into the dogs and the dog training aspect, as and it was developed for hunters, but it's kind of gotten away from that. I think it's getting pretty costly to go to a hunt test. You get a $100 entry fee, and the cost of motels today gas, you're driving who knows where to it. You sit back and you go home and you think, man, I could have went to South
Iowa.
Dakota or
Yeah.
Iowa pheasant hunting for 3 days, and I'd have rather done that than to go run a test to get this ribbon.
Yeah, to lose.
Right, yeah,
To go-
exactly.
Get disqualified on something stupid.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, let's get this thing wrapped up. Thanks for coming on.
Oh, thank you. And thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. Pretty soon you're going to have to do something like this. Talk about dog training.
Yeah, there you go.
But yeah, we'll definitely be doing some more stuff. Now
That'll
that
be
you're
great.
local and do some videos and all that stuff. So, all right, everybody. So thanks. That's it. Until next time. And that's a wrap on another episode of the HuntScience podcast. I want to thoroughly take this time to thank everybody who has listened or even watched till the end of this episode and had the opportunity to hopefully enjoy the show that we put out for you. It's something that we're really trying to do and take notes and put good quality content for everybody to enjoy. We want to take this moment also to, if you enjoyed the show, check us out over on our social media platforms. Give us a like, give us a follow, check that bell notification, look for the content that we're putting out. Of course, reach out to us, leave comments. Did you like the show? We would love to hear your reviews of the show and any concerns that you have, any updates or any type of feedback to make our content better. We're always open ears for the people that are consuming our show and our content. We want to hear from you. What is it that you want to see and what is it that you would like us to do? If you want to check us out on any of our social media, first off, you can head over to our website, go to www.huntsciencepodcast.com. You can check us out on Instagram at HuntScience_podcast, or you can check us out over at our Facebook page at The HuntScience Podcast. Any of those is open. You can, like I said, feel free to comment and all of the above that you do with social media. I just want to take this time again to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for everybody for watching and listening to the content that we're putting out. It means the world to me, and I can't wait for you guys to join us on another episode. Until then, everybody, have a great day, and we'll see you next time.